Neil Diamond's 4 kids grew up largely outside the limelight and took paths you might never expect. One of them even accidentally inspired one of Neil's most famous songs, while another chose a life far away from show business. So, what are Neil Diamond's children up to now? And how did growing up with a legendary father shape their lives? Number 4. Marjorie Diamond. Born in 1965 in New York City as the eldest daughter of a rising star, young Marjorie's early years were anything but typical. When she was just a little girl, her dad was often on the road crafting the musical career that would make him a household name. In 1969, when Marjorie was about 4 years old, her parents' marriage fell apart. After the divorce, Marjorie and her younger sister Elyn stayed with their mother, Jay, on the East Coast. Neil moved out to California to pursue his career, which meant the girls grew up mostly away from their famous father for a while. They later relocated to New Jersey with their mom after Jay remarried. It was a big adjustment. Imagine being a kid seeing your dad more on TV or stage than at home. But Neil made sure to spend time with Marjorie and Elyn whenever he could, often bringing them along when possible and cherishing the moments together. One of those father-daughter moments turned out to be legendary. Picture this. It's the mid-1970s, and Neil is with Marjorie and Elyn in a New York City hotel enjoying a rare family evening together. Outside, the city streets are alive with noise. In fact, there's a parade going by. The young girls are drawing pictures in the hotel room when suddenly Marjorie, around 10 years old at the time, looks out the window at the marching bands and cheering crowds. With the wide-eyed wonder only a child has, she turns to her dad and exclaims, "Daddy, what a beautiful noise." Neil paused, amazed by the phrase that had just tumbled out of his daughter's mouth. Beautiful noise. It struck him as the perfect way to describe the joyful sound of the city. Right then and there, Neil knew he had something special. "Marjorie," he said, "tonight we're going to write a song called Beautiful Noise." And that's exactly what he did. Neil wrote the entire song that very night, inspired by his little girl's offhand comment. Beautiful Noise went on to become one of Neil Diamond's signature songs, the title track of his hit 1976 album, and eventually the name of a Broadway musical about his life. Talk about leaving your mark at an early age. Neil later called The Moment Kismet, a perfect stroke of fate. And here's a sweet little bonus. Marjorie and Elyn even got to sing with their dad that night. Their voices can actually be heard on Neil's home demo recording of Beautiful Noise, which was included in a 1996 anthology album. So, somewhere in Neil's archives is a recording of him singing Beautiful Noise with his 2 young daughters chiming in, a real family keepsake. After those early adventures, Marjorie largely stayed out of the public eye as she grew up. Neil was determined to let his kids have a normal life, despite his fame. Marjorie attended school and lived an everyday life on the East Coast, away from the Hollywood spotlight. As an adult, she made New York City her home. Her dad may have been a California man by then, but Marjorie seems to have kept an East Coast state of mind. Marjorie also started a family of her own. She has been married twice, first to a man named David Shapiro in 1990, and later to Dr. Jeffrey Cohen in 2000. Through those marriages, Marjorie became a mother and Neil became a grandfather. In fact, Marjorie made Neil a granddad for the very first time in 1995 when she welcomed a child, a son named Alexander. Neil was over the moon about being a grandfather. "I love being a granddad," he told people in 1996, saying it made his chest swell with pride. Marjorie went on to have multiple children. According to reports, she has a daughter named Maya from her first marriage, and 2 younger kids, Zachary and Abigail, from her second marriage. These days, Marjorie Diamond is in her late 50s and lives a quiet, private life in New York City. She stays out of the spotlight, focusing on her family and personal pursuits. Number 3. Elyn Diamond. Neil's second child, Elyn Diamond, was born in 1968, just a few years after her sister Marjorie. As the younger daughter from Neil's first marriage, Elyn was only a baby when her parents split up in 1969. She and Marjorie grew up side by side, first in New York and later in New Jersey with their mom. Like her sister, Elyn had a childhood far removed from the glitz of her dad's superstar world. She saw Neil during school vacations and special occasions. But for the most part, Elyn enjoyed a fairly normal upbringing on the East Coast. Later in life, Elyn found her calling in a perhaps unexpected area: philanthropy and advocacy. While she kept a low profile and generally avoids the media, those who know the Diamond family say Elyn has a big heart and a creative spirit of her own. In fact, she founded an organization called the Children Who Never Forget Foundation, aimed at helping children who have suffered abuse. This cause was clearly dear to her, and her famous father supported her efforts wholeheartedly. Over the years, Elyn and Neil have teamed up for charitable events to raise awareness and funds for child abuse survivors. One memorable moment came in October 2000 when Neil and Elyn hosted a special bowling benefit at Bullmore Lanes in New York City for Elyn's foundation. Yes, bowling. The usually spotlight-shy Elyn stepped forward to hold a public event, and her dad was right there by her side. Bowling strikes and spares to support her charity. There's even a photo of Neil Diamond enthusiastically lining up a shot on the bowling lane with Elyn smiling next to him, a father and daughter united for a good cause. Earlier that same year in May 2000, Elyn also accompanied Neil to a concert at Lincoln Center, showing how she remains involved in her dad's world on her own terms. Professionally, Elyn has been described as a creative individual. She worked in the field of creative advertising and has lent her talents to various philanthropic and artistic endeavors. At one point, she even took on a role with the Jennifer Diamond Cancer Fund, a charity named in honor of a family friend or relative, helping to guide its mission. It's clear that Elyn's passion is in helping others and using her creativity for positive change. In her personal life, Elyn Diamond, who would now be in her mid-50s, has kept things very private, much like her sister. But we do know that she found love and started a family of her own. Elyn married Mitchell Resnick, a film producer, in 2005. Not long before that, she had become a mother. Elyn and Mitchell welcomed their first child, a daughter named Avery Max, on December 20th, 2004. Becoming a mom was a new chapter for Elyn, and it also gave Neil yet another grandchild to do on. By all accounts, Neil is very close with all of his grandkids, and he's known to light up when talking about them. Despite being the daughter of one of the most famous singer-songwriters in the world, Elyn has succeeded in living a low-key life. She doesn't seek out fame or media attention. In fact, you won't find Elyn on flashy red carpets, but you might find her quietly attending a charity gala or involved in community fundraising efforts. In 2014, for example, Elyn participated in something called the Taylor Smith Pie Smash Challenge, a fundraising campaign to help a young girl's recovery from a traumatic brain injury. That's the kind of person she is, stepping in to support others when she can, without fanfare. Neil has expressed immense pride in how all his children grew up, and Elyn is no exception. Though we don't hear from Elyn in the press, it's said that she shares her father's love of family and often comes out to cheer for him at important events, usually from the audience, not the stage. Back when Neil received tributes or awards, it wouldn't be unusual for Elyn to be quietly in attendance, celebrating her dad's achievements with a smile. And Neil, for his part, tried to be there for Elyn too, even as his fame grew. He loves family, one family friend noted, pointing out that Neil's touring crew even felt like family. The bond between Neil and Elyn might not play out in public, but it's undoubtedly strong in private. Number 2, Jesse Diamond. Next up is Neil Diamond's third child and his first son, Jesse Diamond. Born April 1970 in Los Angeles, Jesse came into the world right as Neil's career was skyrocketing. Being the son of a global music icon might sound like a charmed life, and in some ways it was. But Jesse's upbringing had its unique twists. For one, Neil was determined to keep his son's childhood as normal as possible, despite the fact that Sweet Caroline was blasting on every radio. Jesse grew up mostly in California, where Neil and his second wife, Marcia Murphy, made their home. He was about 24 years old when his parents' long marriage ended in the mid-1990s, meaning he spent most of his youth in an intact, if unusual, family environment, while Neil was married to Marcia. From a young age, Jesse was exposed to the world of music and touring. In fact, Neil found a clever way to spend time with his son on the road. Believe it or not, little Jesse sometimes appeared on stage with his dad as early as age 6. Not because Jesse was a prodigy performer, but because Neil literally wanted to keep an eye on him. As Neil joked in an interview, "Jesse has been playing on stage since he was 6, mostly so I could keep an eye on him while I was on the road." You can imagine tiny Jesse with a pair of drumsticks hanging out near the drum kit while his dad belted out hits in front of thousands. Jesse naturally soaked up the music around him. By his early 20s, he could play the drums and had started writing his own music. He even went on tour with his father, joining Neil's band as a percussionist for fun. "It's just good fun for me," Jesse said of touring with Dad, noting that he didn't even get paid. He was just along for the great experience. Hey, who needs a paycheck when you're getting the rock star tour treatment with your pops? Free travel and performing for cheering crowds sounds like a pretty sweet deal. Neil loved having his son on the road, too. It was like a dream come true for the elder Diamond. He took to it. He loves it. He plays drums. He writes music. "It's a pleasure for me to have him with me. It's a big kick," Neil said proudly at the time. For a while, it seemed like Jesse might follow directly in his father's musical footsteps. But as much as Jesse enjoyed music, he eventually discovered a different passion that would become his true career: photography. In the 1990s, while still dabbling in music, Jesse decided to study the visual arts. He attended the California Institute of the Arts, Cal Arts, where he immersed himself in photography and fine arts, graduating in 1993. With his artistic eye and creative upbringing, it's no surprise he excelled. By 2002, Jesse had launched his own photography business called The Street Studio. He roamed city streets with his camera, capturing candid moments in everyday life in a style that soon earned him recognition as a talented fine art street photographer. Over the years, Jesse's work has been showcased in galleries from Los Angeles to New York to Germany. He's been published in photography books and even earned awards for his craft, including Fine Art Photographer of the Year at the International Photography Awards in 2004 and a Rising Star Award at a photography festival in 2003. Clearly, the creative gene runs strong in the Diamond family, even if Jesse chose a different medium than his father's music. Jesse didn't leave music behind entirely. He just found a way to blend it with photography. For instance, he has done photo exhibits on musical subjects. One of his noted exhibits was a day in the life of Miles Davis, featuring intimate portraits of the jazz legend. And in a full-circle twist in the 2000s, Jesse teamed up with his younger brother Micah to co-found a company called East, an online photography review service where budding photographers could get their portfolios critiqued by professionals. Jesse served as the Chief Creative Officer of IIST from 2011 to 2020, sharing his expertise and helping others in the field. On the personal front, Jesse Diamond's life has also been eventful. In 1998, while on a trip halfway around the world in Kenya, Jesse had a chance encounter that sounds like a plot from a movie. He met actress Cheryl Lee at a camp in Kenya. Yes, Twin Peaks fans, that's Cheryl Lee, the actress famous for playing Laura Palmer. Sparks flew in the African wilderness, and the couple began dating. After 2 years of romance, Jesse and Cheryl Lee tied the knot in October 2000. Not long before their wedding, they had welcomed a baby boy, Neil Diamond's first grandson, Elijah, born on May 2, 2000. Neil was absolutely delighted. He even wrote a song called Elijah's Song in 2001, included on his 3-chord opera album as a tribute to his new grandson. For a time, Jesse seemed to be living a storybook life. A burgeoning photography career, married to an actress and a father to a little boy. But like many young couples, Jesse and Cheryl Lee eventually grew apart. They divorced some years later, Both remained devoted to their son, Elijah, who grew up to become a model represented by agencies in New York, Milan, and Los Angeles. Clearly, the camera loves the Diamond genes. Jesse continued to focus on raising his son and pursuing his art. Years after his first marriage, Jesse found love again, this time with someone from his school days. He reconnected with Alana Bellsberg, a behavioral health therapist, and an old friend from his high school years. The two began dating in 2016, though they had known each other much longer. By June 2019, Jesse and Elena decided to tie the knot and were married in an intimate ceremony. Jesse, usually a private person, couldn't help but share his happiness publicly. On their 4th anniversary, he posted a sweet message to Instagram celebrating his forever one and only, and even included an old photo of the two of them from their 1980s boarding school days. It was a heartwarming post showing that Jesse had found lasting love and stability. Jesse's Instagram, by the way, also reveals how close he remains to his famous father. For Neil's 82nd birthday in January 2023, Jesse posted a candid photo of Neil strumming a guitar outside in nature. Spending another birthday with his portable natural habitat, Jesse wrote affectionately, teasing that his dad is never far from a guitar. "Happy birthday, Dad. Love, respect, salute," he added. It's clear that despite the hectic years of touring and the time apart when Jesse was young, father and son have a strong bond. Today, Jesse Diamond is in his early 50s, an accomplished photographer, a husband, and a proud dad. He didn't become a singer like Neil, but he did share the stage with him and then carved out his own creative niche behind the camera. Number 1. Micah Diamond was born on Valentine's Day, February 14, 1978. A fitting date for a child of a man who's written so many love songs. As the baby of the family, Micah spent his early years in Los Angeles with his parents, Neil and Marcia. By the time Micah was in high school, his dad was an uber-famous veteran of the music industry. However, things were changing on the home front. Neil and Marcia's 25-year marriage was coming to an end by the mid-1990s. Micah was a high school senior around 1994 when his parents divorced. That was undoubtedly a tough time for him. It's never easy being a teenager and seeing your family break apart, let alone under the gaze of public interest. Family members have noted that Neil did his best to remain a supportive father, even as his marriage to Micah's mom unraveled. Neil's brother, Harvey Diamond, once commented that Neil was always there emotionally when the kids really needed him. Even if he had been somewhat absorbed in his work and had stopped paying attention to the needs of his wife. So, while the divorce was painful, Micah and his brother Jesse knew their dad still had their back. In fact, after the split, Neil and his sons grew even closer in many ways. Neil himself said that his boys became very protective of him once it was just the three of them. Growing up, Micah was described as a bright and talented kid, much like his siblings. And like his brother Jesse, Micah gravitated toward the arts, particularly photography and creative design. It seems the two Diamond brothers had a lot in common. Micah attended college and developed skills in multimedia and tech. By the 2010s, he teamed up with Jesse to launch the photography startupist. Micah served as a co-founder and took on the role of Chief Technical Officer, CTO of the company, orchestrating the technical side of their online platform. The idea that Neil Diamond's sons started a modern digital business together is pretty cool. It shows how the creative spark in that family adapted to a new high-tech era. Aside from Micah built a career as a freelance photographer and videographer. He even branded his work under Micah Diamond Photography and became known for his keen eye and artistic perspective. If you ever stumble upon Micah's portfolio, you'll see a range of compelling images from cityscapes to portraits, often imbued with a sense of storytelling. Perhaps a trait inherited from a songwriter dad, but expressed through visuals. Micah also spent some time as a creative director at a media company called Schnaps, honing his skills in visual media. While Micah has largely kept out of the public limelight, one significant project brought him directly into his father's orbit professionally. In 2020, Neil Diamond was working on a special album called Classic Diamonds, a collection of his greatest hits reimagined with a symphony orchestra. This was a big deal for Neil, a sort of career capstone, and he wanted to document the recording process in London. Who better to trust with that job than his own son, the talented photographer? Neil sent Micah off to Abbey Road Studios in London. Yes, the famed Beatles studio to photograph the orchestral sessions for Classic Diamonds. Micah embraced the opportunity, snapping away as his dad's timeless songs were given new life by the London Symphony Orchestra. What happened next is something Neil Diamond has spoken about with tremendous pride. After the sessions, Micah presented his father with a collection of photographs and even wrote Neil a letter describing what the experience meant to him. Neil was blown away. He's a very talented photographer. Micah wrote me a letter that moved me. It almost made me cry because he got it, Neil said, his voice filled with emotion. Through his camera lens, Micah had managed to capture not just images, but the soul of the music and the significance of the moment. Neil raved about the results, saying Micah took the photos with a lot of soul and a lot of passion, and that his son absolutely nailed it. Those pictures ended up documenting a poignant chapter in Neil's late career, and they were taken by someone who understood the music on a personal level. I didn't tell him what to capture. I just wanted great pictures that helped visualize the story and the emotion of those songs. And he got it? Neil said, clearly bursting with pride. Not only because it was his kid behind the camera, but because Micah's artistry meant that listeners and viewers would better feel the emotional content of the album. It was a beautiful full-circle moment. The little boy who once needed his dad's guidance was now helping to immortalize his father's music for future generations. On the home front, Micah has also built a happy life. He's now in his mid-40s. According to family reports, Micah got married to a woman named Emily a few years back. In fact, the two had a lovely wedding ceremony at the Flora Diesel Center in Mandeville, Louisiana, suggesting that perhaps Emily has roots in Louisiana. Or maybe they just love the romantic setting. A Valentine's baby having a wedding near New Orleans. There's some poetic charm to that. Micah and Emily have kept their life together very private, and it's not publicly known if they have children. If they do, they're keeping those details out of the spotlight, consistent with how all the Diamond kids value their privacy. Micah may not be a household name, but within his field, he's respected. And within his family, he's adored. He, like his siblings, often stays behind the scenes at events. But you might catch a glimpse of him in the crowd during a special Neil Diamond appearance, or see a mention of him when Neil talks about family. For example, Neil has occasionally shared anecdotes about his sons in interviews, like how Micah and Jesse sometimes join him for breakfast or family gatherings, just as any sons would with their dad. The glitz and glamour of Neil's career did not seem to spoil the genuine family bond they share. If anything, going through the ups and downs, long tours, divorces, life changes, brought Neil and his children closer in the end. As of now, Micah continues to pursue his creative projects. Whether it's photography, perhaps some filmmaking, or new tech ventures, he's carrying on the Diamond legacy in his own innovative way.